I want to thank everybody for joining me today because I have the chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation joining me, and we're going to talk to her about so much. And we're going to connect so many dots. You're going to learn so many different things. But today I have the honor of having Queen Quet to join me. And Queen, I want to thank you for taking time because I know your schedule. I know
And
you have been featured all over the world. You are very busy, and I consider it an honor to have you to join us and to be able to share your insight and your knowledge. So thank you for joining us today.
well, thank you, brother G. And I yeah, they say 100 one of we and thing like that. I say, well, I go gwine for yeti way to crack your teeth both on this thing. And red of us say Hunter to gwine to the motherland. So we want to send Hunter off with blessings and safety and all that kind of thing. So I say, well, I go gwine, sit on the porch with you, or leave it anyway, and thing like that today.
I love it. I love it. You took me home. And so when I say home, so everyone understands the context and why this is so special for me is because I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. Spent a lot of my summers. I grew up in Washington, D.C., but I would always spend my summers in the low country in Somerville or Charleston or somewhere in that area. And I did not know a lot about the Gullah Geechee community, the family, the
Mm-hmm.
nation. I would hear the
Mm-hmm.
term Geechee,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
I
everybody.
never understood what it meant. I it's almost like now I know the accent because it was, well, what's that? Where's that accent from? Are you from the islands? They would,
Can it?
because my mother, she has a really strong accent,
Yeah, yeah.
and so she was like, well, no, I'm from from Charleston and in that
Mm-hmm.
area, and
Mm-hmm.
so, but for me, I didn't know much about the Gullah Geechee history until I went
Right.
to West Africa. I went to Ghana,
Mm,
and then I started traveling throughout the continent with more than
yeah.
50 countries.
Wow.
And at that point, I said I need to learn more about my roots here in
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
And I did my research, and that's how I came across you and all that you've been doing. So anyway, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been doing, and just bring us up to speed some.
Well, sure. As Queen Quet head from the body of the Gullah Geechee Nation, as people say. I'm also the founder of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. So for over 40 years now, I have been doing what I do every day, which is to learn more about our traditions, heritage, and culture and pass that on, to live it, to pass that on, to celebrate it, to make sure that other people present us in an accurate way and stop presenting us as something of the past, something that is dead or is in the process of dying. And as Queen, I'm often called to meetings. I have to do a lot of those in legal arenas. So whether it's the United Nations, whether it's General Assemblies, whether it's county councils, whether it's courtrooms, I do a lot of that kind of work. And before COVID, in between all that, I would try to make sure I got to educational centers. So anything from K through 12, sometimes even little nurseries, all the way through to colleges to help make sure that people know we the Binya and we in the Guayno with tall.
You're gonna have me learning how to, because I got a little bit. I can talk a little bit,
A little bit.
just a little bit, just a little. But I'm gonna get trained. I'm gonna get a good training in this.
On a dead out that hill too long, ain't it? Okay.
Oh no, you didn't say edit. You didn't say edit. Ah, you said edit. You said edit. That thing you took me back home right there.
I know that's right.
See, a lot of people don't know in it. So that, but when you've been in
I
it,
know. I know that a we think. Yes, sir.
tell me why the Gullah Geechee heritage and history is so important to America. Why is it so important that we learn about it?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that, surprises me is how many people in America don't realize that America has a law to make sure that they recognize and acknowledge Gullah Geechee culture and to work with the Gullah Geechee Nation to make sure we continue to be able to sustain it. And that law is the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Act that got passed in 2006 by the U.S. Congress and signed into law by then President George Bush. Okay. And so the interesting thing is we thought, Congressman Clyburn and I in particular, who really fought for it, thought that after that, kind of the world will know about it. So they'll all put it in the curriculums and no. And then what they ended up putting in the curriculum was watered down versions, misinterpretations still of what the culture is. And it's important that, as the statement goes, When you don't know history, you're destined to repeat it. So, especially as people of African descent, we all need to spend a part of our day every day learning more about who we are, about who we are. And if anybody's a native to the coast from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, and Honey Yeti Gullah Geechee, you should immediately say, hey, that's me. That's part of me. So if you don't know yourself, how can you know anyone else? If you don't know yourself, how can you love yourself? If you don't love yourself, how can you love anyone else? And therefore, how can the world become a better place? So that's why to me it's important that people know about Gullah Geechee culture, because it is still a living, breathing culture that came from African and indigenous ancestry. And in America, it's the foundation of America. So if you don't know on that which it's been built, if you don't know that, then how do you live in the house? The house can start falling down. You'll never know where it really needs repairs because you don't even know what a foundation is. So it's critical for everybody in the world to want to know about Gullah Geechee culture, but start at home. My mama said charity begins at home and then goes abroad. So it needs to start with Gullah Geechee folks, even if they ain't sure, they think so. Then you from Jacksonville to Jacksonville on any of the Sea Islands, you heard your granddaddy, your great grandma, anybody from there, you need to start learning today. And then if you Black, you should just want to know who we are. You should just want to know who your folks are, just period. Wherever we are in the world, you should want to know our accomplishments beyond athletics and music.
Oh, yeah, you said that perfectly. And I think that I'll say this, when I was growing up, and we talked about a little bit about this a few moments ago. When I was growing up, I was taught to be ashamed of, we wouldn't put Gullah with it. They just say Geechee.
Geechee.
And they would say, them people Geechee, they Geechee.
Yep.
And I was trained to be ashamed of my history.
Absolutely.
So because I was trained, and it was it was almost kind of like a regional thing. You know how it is classism. You know how classism goes. And you got the uppity folks over here, and you got the uppity ones over here.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to be with them over there. And them people out there on the islands, they're real country.
And them country ones. That's right.
You know exactly. But when I went over to Africa, I went to Ghana, and I started eating jollof rice. And when I had my first,
here we go.
I said, wait a minute. I said, it's red rice right here. It's real spicy red rice. But I said, but
it's a red rice. Right. You said, what seasoning did in this red rice here? What is you in the pepper?
It was a whole lot of pepper. So
whole lot of pepper. You ain't never lie.
So I said, well, wait a minute. I said, this connection is real. And I said,
absolutely.
So when I came back to the States, I went to Charleston. And I went to a restaurant. I said, I gotta get me some red rice. I gotta get me, because I live in DC. I gotta get me some red rice. And so I was eating red rice. And I said, I tasted Jola. I said, wait a minute, there's a connection here.
There's a connection.
And I said, I have been trained to be ashamed of this. And I felt like my mind had been toyed with. And it was my own family who would say negative things about the Geechee, but they had the same accent, they had the same food, they had the same culture, and so I guess seeing this now, where I used to be ashamed, I'm so proud to be a part of the Gullah Geechee community, the family. I would have learned so much more. I want people to understand that when you know, just to your point, that when you know who you are and where you come from, you show up in the world differently. You show up.
Absolutely.
You can't talk to me negatively about the Gullah Geechee history, because now I understand how important it is to America. So now, how does all of this? How does the Gullah Geechee history connect or relate to Africa? How can you kind of tie those two together?
That's easy, but let me say this to you first. Scripture says wisdom is the principal thing. So get wisdom, but in all thy getting, get understanding.
That's right.
So that is where we are now, is getting an understanding that first and foremost, it served a purpose to ensure that Black people hate themselves. Because as I said, if you hate you, you can't love nobody else. And so if you go back and listen to speeches from Dr. Martin Luther King, you listen to speeches from Malcolm X, they all ask you who taught you to hate yourself. And you just mentioned family, but you mentioned Charleston. So when we want to tie back to Africa, we got to start with Charleston.
Okay.
Because the first groups of Africans brought into North America via what became known now as the transatlantic slave trade came in through Charleston. They came into Charleston County through Sullivan's Island. 40% of all Africans enslaved in North America came through Sullivan's Island. So that's why they believed that at least 1/3 of all people of African descent in North America could trace their roots back to what is now the Gullah Geechee Nation. And the Gullah Geechee Nation going from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, encompassing all the Sea Islands and 30 to 35 miles inland to the St. Johns River. Those areas were the plantations. When we talk about the colonies and the colonizers that form Charlestown, which is now the historic peninsula of Charleston, South Carolina, you cannot avoid talking about Africans because Charleston or Charlestown was the #1 enslavement auction block in North America, where the Africans called black gold, black cargo that were kidnapped and then brought to be sold, brought through the Caribbean or the Caribbean, which is why Charleston is such an international city still and has such relationships with various islands around the world. It is because that port city was such a major entry point for Africans getting into North America to be treated as chattel, tools, items to be bought and sold. First, women being the first groups they largely brought in because they felt that the women worked harder than the men. They studied, the Europeans studied the Africans before they kidnapped them. They didn't just randomly go get folk. So first they got the Angolans, who were largely blacksmiths, hence the word Gullah, because when they would sell them, they bastardized the word Angola and would say, we have a cargo of Gullah for sale. But they also quickly found that those Africans were always in the warrior class that was leading the uprisings. So they eventually said, well, oh no, we don't want them. Let's put a ban on their importation. And they start importing another group with the name Gullah, G-O-L-A. Where you're going in Sierra Leone, you'll find there are Gola people, there are Gizzi, G-I-D-Z-I, there are Kizzi, K-I-S-S-E-E. That is where the words Gullah and Geechee come from. Angola and the Gola and the Gizzi or the Kizzi come to Geechee. So now, when we talk about the connections are through history, they are through cultural traditions, they're through spiritual practices, they're through the foodways, as you mentioned. When you get to West Africa, if you go to the coastline cities, you'll see people sewing cast nets. You'll see people casting nets out there, the same way we do here. Okay, doing the same thing to get something for Nampan and things like that for that evening. Now, once again, we cook them differently. Theirs will be a lot peppery and spicy, and where ours, got that onion and thing like that there. We might try to smoke that thing down some places or go and stew that thing down and throw that thing over some yellow grits and thing like that there, boy, make it slap your grandma, as to say. So, but we have these connections. We also have songs and things that will link us back, but they sound different because the languages changed over time. Because what we did here was Gullah became the amalgamation of numerous African languages, in particular, a lot from West Africa, but many also from the Congo region. So we have ancestors that connect to Angola. We have them to Madagascar, which is where the Carolina gold rice that goes into that red rice that we all love so much. The first seeds came here that way. So we have so many things, spiritual practices. When we do the shout, it ain't DC. Y'all didn't know nothing about this.
Yeah.
You see, you'll hear that on the drum head whenever you're in various parts of Africa. And so we have a lot of links and connections back to the motherland. And I've hosted so many different ethnic groups of people from various parts of Africa that when they get here, they're stunned, like you were stunned with the jollof rice. They're stunned here when we bring out the red rice. They're stunned here when we say, oh, we got yam and thing. Y'all got yam? Then they see it. What is this? This is not a yam. I said, right, sweet potato. We also call it yam. Oh, because our yams are white over there. But let me taste it, sister. Oh, this is good. We make them the same way, and so we
You
have
got all the
so many.
accents now. You got the Gullah
Okay,
Geechee. You got the West.
yeah,
You
and
let me
my
find out.
people,
You true to it.
my people. So definitely, we have so many links everywhere throughout the African diaspora. It is amazing. And when we talk about Africa too, let's not just talk about coming to, like when they say Eddie Murphy, that's one of my favorite movies, coming to America. But you got to think about how many Gullah Geechees went back and repatriated.
Yes.
In West Africa. We were the ones there to found Freetown, Sierra Leone, who are the Creoles. We are the ones who went and settled Liberia. Many of those Africans that repatriated left the Carolina and Georgia coast and went and did that, set up the first churches and set up these townships and set up Liberia. And so there is an ever existing link between us as Gullah Geechees and the motherland.
What have been some of the challenges the Gullah Geechee community has faced in the low country coastal regions of North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida? What are some challenges that I guess have stood out to you the most?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is what we just touched on when you told your personal story, was miseducation and misrepresentation. And we still face that now, because a lot of people were taught that if you hadn't been a cracky teeth and thing like that this year, you were cracky. So if you spoke like that, you were ignorant, you were dumb, you were backward. And so some of us ingested that and believed that, but that came by way of missionaries. That came by way of colonizers. And that is happening in West Africa. I get the visitors from West Africa because they come here to relearn some traditions that no longer go on in their countries because they got assimilated from colonization. And a lot of African Americans don't realize that. You see what I'm saying? And so you have that. You also have displacement. So throughout the Gullah Geechee Nation, which is why we had to stand on our human right to self-determination and become a nation of our own as well, is to be able to have a means by which we could fight back, even on an international level, of the displacement, because all these people were coming in. You know how they say that one man's junk is another man's treasure?
Yes.
So where like you ended up in Washington, D.C., a lot of people left the coast going northward to go to school, to go get jobs they couldn't get in the South, things like that. But also when they got there, felt like, I'll never go back down South. I'll never go back. And oh, no, I don't want to be considered no Geechee. I'm not going back down there. So they didn't even pay their land taxes. But outside people said, ooh, love it, paradise. And they snatched it up. Now the same people wish they had paid those taxes. They wish they had held on to great grandmama's house that they thought was, I want that old house. You don't? Now you wish you did, right? After you realize that just over broke ain't gonna never get you for the job, all right? And that you live in a box called an apartment where you could have had a house with land. So the displacement there was an onslaught. That's the word I always use for it. It was an onslaught of displacement when others found this coast to no longer be, quote, mosquito ridden, but to find it to be paradise. And they started coming in, and the ancestors of those who had lost the Civil War started coming back saying, we want that land back. And we don't want these Black folks to have it. And so they did everything from murder to just manipulation, to get it, changing laws, piercing the veil on heirs property laws, everything you can imagine. It's not stopped. It has not stopped. It has not stopped. And so this has continued to go on. So those have been major challenges. And of course, the third one being, people say Gullah Geechees are land rich and cash poor. So as these people come in, and as our region becomes more and more a tourist destination, even more so now because of the pandemic, or some call it the plandemic, that is going on and is happening now, more people are coming to this coast because they can't leave the country. Or they don't want to, certain countries don't want them to come, so they can't go. Or they don't want to get the vaccine, so they know they can't go to other countries, but they can travel around within the U.S. borders. So they're coming to our coast because, again, why? It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Paradise. Why not come here and want to be on the beach and want to be on the shore and eat some of that good food? Why not do it? So they're coming here in groves, but then a lot of times people don't go home. See, that's the problem we got. They come and see, but then they don't want to go home. And see, then our people lose their position because of that. And then we don't have the taxes to pay because your land, if someone builds a resort next to where your property was, you don't have to change one knob on your door. Yeah. And all of a sudden your appraisal, your appraisal of your home goes up, so your tax liability on it goes up. So these are things that are still consistent problems. And another one that is really a major one is climate change. So climate change, sea level rise, the continued and massive impacts, more hurricanes and tropical storms every year than we've ever had. These are major issues. And so those are really our top four things. But if we could get past the miseducation and misrepresentation, I think we'd have more of our people taking pride in who they are, and they would be part of holding on to the land and taking a stand. And then they'd have the presence of mind to get past survival into trying to then do some things in terms of climate action. So it's critical that we do that.
You know, one of the things as you were talking, I was reminded of the parallels that I saw when I went to Africa. I've been to 6 countries in Africa.
You ain't got to show off. You ain't got to show off, because see, somebody, I'm trying to catch up, brother. Don't be showing off and stuff. I've been to all 50 states, and I'm trying to knock out all 7 continents, and here came Rona. So don't be showing off up. Don't show off up in here.
I'm gonna tell you something. When I was there, because I went to East Africa, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. When I went, my first time going was in 2018. And when I went, I said, that's it. I said, I've waited too long. I said, they had me afraid of this continent. They had me afraid of these people, and there's nothing to be afraid of. But you know, there's some place I went. You talk about Angola.
Yeah.
And there's another place I went, and I went to Salvador in Brazil.
Okay.
And, you know, the majority of the enslaved went to Brazil. And so I said, but I want to go to Salvador. I said, because they were telling me it was 100 million of us, you know, of Africans.
That is there.
And I said, well, I need to go see these people because I don't see them on the news. I don't see them.
You know, that's right.
I went and I was blown away. It felt more African. When you were talking about how some people from West Africa will come to the Low Country, I felt that when I was in Brazil also, because they did not lose their identity the way that that you see, you know, the difference in colonization. Portuguese colonization was different than British colonization. British would just try to take all of your identity.
That's right.
Strip you down to, like, you have these brown bodies with white minds.
But that's what
their intention was. So when I went and I saw all of the African culture in Brazil, I said, wait a minute. I said, this, and they knew they were from Angola. They had an Angolan society. That's
the difference. Yeah.
It was, and I was like, and I'm kind of looking, and I'm looking around, and I'm saying, so when I came back, I said, okay, we have to figure out a way to properly educate, because to your point, as we begin to have these conversations, now people want to learn and they become curious about it. And then the other thing that you were talking about, before that, when you were talking about how parts of West Africa, because there were parts of Africa I've been in, East and West, where I was like, am I in Africa? What? I was in the airport in Zanzibar, and I was the only brown person traveling
that you saw. Yeah.
I took a video. I said, y'all not gonna believe this.
I hear what you're saying.
You know,
when I went to Morocco, we went because of the United Nations, and I felt like you did. Like, okay, ain't no more of us came over here for this. Like, what's up? What's going on? You know? So yeah, and it's really interesting, because the funny thing that happened in Morocco was we were trying to find food. Like you talk about, we trying to find food, and I'm trying to find safe food because I'm concerned. I'm like, oh Lord, and talk with the water, and I don't want to eat nothing, get sick, and then, you know, this and that. And I got all my little stuff in case something feel funny, and take this and drink that, right? So I'm like, wherever we find to eat, that's near where we staying at. If I'm fine the first time, they're gonna probably be where I eat every day. Right. So we get here, And I'm confused. Like, I can't find no rice. I'm like, what's with all the pasta? This ain't Italy. Why the pasta? The pasta. So it's like, I'm in Africa? Or what? Oh, I'm back in Europe. What the world? I mean, all these menus with all these pasta dishes. So I'm like, okay, order the pasta. This brother comes in from, he was also there because of the UN, and he was from West Africa. The picture on the menu really did look like a plate of rice with the meat over it.
Okay,
you know,
okay.
that's how we like
I
it.
gotta put the meat over it. Right, right.
You know how we do.
Yeah, I know how we do
So
it.
he orders it based on the picture. When they give it to him, it's not rice in the bowl. So he's like, hey, this is not what I want. Where's the rice? And the guy looks at him like, rice? Like what? And the guy's Moroccan, but he's looking at him like, rice? No. This is the pasta. He's like, no. He's like, this one. And he's pointing to the picture. So see me at the next table, pull the menu out, glancing, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, he right though. That do look like rice. Because it was some type of stock picture. So he was like, no, I want this one. I need rice. And they said, no rice. We have couscous. He said, what is a couscous? I like to die laughing. And so I'm over here. I'm like, oh my God. So the brother is upset. So when the guy goes back and he goes to go get some couscous to bring so he can show him, the brother is like, oh my God, what is this? And I said, yeah, brother, I understand. In my country, we eat rice every day. And he's like, yes, I need rice, and I mean, it was so funny because he was like so upset. He could not believe this, so, and I get it because he flew from one side of Africa to another side of Africa. He's not thinking that there's anywhere in his whole continent that don't have rice, So yeah, but like you said, so yeah, I know the feeling. I know how you felt. It's like you're in the twilight zone, like what?
It's really you said it perfectly. You feel like you are in the twilight zone and you're like, okay, somebody been playing games here. And I think that when you were talking about the land, and I went through something similar. Now I'm kind of bringing it back to the Low Country.
Yeah.
In my family, in my immediate family, they were in the process of losing the family land that my grandparents worked their whole life for.
Yeah.
And even if you take it even back to some of my great grandparents,
I was gonna say, yeah.
I said, oh no. I said, oh no. I said, that will not happen. I said, oh no.
Thank God.
And I had to put my foot down. I had to I had to bring out some of that DC and some of the West Africa, some of the Gullah Geechee. It all came out that day.
You had to step to them. You had to step to them right quick.
Everybody. They were like, and
I know they was like, this boy done lost his mind. Who
absolutely. Because I was like, no, I said, I watched them work. And I said, there's nowhere in the world we're going to give this back to the state.
And that's what you've been doing.
Oh, I said, there's no way.
Giving it away.
Oh no, never give. Oh no. So I was able to work it in such a way where I was able to take over the land, and basically the land came to me.
Excellent.
And so we're talking about a significant amount of land, and I said no, and so we were able to improve the homes and so now people live in the homes and business the property that's there. But now what's happening in that area is that it's now a very a lot of people are moving into that.
I was going to say it's gentrified, right?
Oh, they gentrified.
It's gentrified. Yeah.
I'm getting little letters in the mail every day. You want to sell? You want
to sell your land? I get those too and put them straight in the fire.
And so I understand it. And, and that's why I think the education that you do is so important. And more people need to know about what you're doing. Because if we can, I have this saying that proper education is one of our greatest weapons, because what has happened that we have been so misinformed over the years, like you said, to hate ourselves, to hate our own culture, to be in denial on so many different levels that you see. If we just give everything away, they give it away in DC. The same thing happened in DC when they gentrified DC.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want anything. The same thing happens in West Africa when they say, well, you have an opportunity to go to Europe. Well, leave.
Oh, yeah, they leave it.
Going up here to London and to Paris and forget East
Africa
or West Africa or Central Africa. So with that, I just think about what's happening now, and I think everybody had a wake up call towards the tail end of last year, the beginning of this year, to say, wait a minute, there's more to the story, and that's
Hmm.
what you see. There's more to this story than what we've ever been taught in any
So
um,
true.
public school system that they're
So
going to teach it. They're not just going to give us all of this, so we have to do it
no,
for ourselves, and we have to educate ourselves, and not just educating those of us who are of African descent, but also those who are not of African descent who want to know, because there are
correct.
people who do want to know. I do have
Right.
a question for you. I saw a video that you
Hmm.
did,
Hmm.
and you talked about how, and I'm correct me if I'm wrong because I may have misheard, but you
Hmm.
talked about how there were already people who were here
Hmm.
before the before those who came with slavery. Did I hear that
Oh
properly?
yes, that's correct. That's correct.
So
Um,
I'm talking
yeah,
about Africans. I'm talking about
yeah. It's interesting because before I came in to do this interview, I was out working in our archive. We have the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition, which I founded 25 years ago, roughly 24 and a half years now. Um, has the only archive in the world totally dedicated to Gullah Geechee history, heritage, and culture. And I looked at a book that someone donated to us, and the title of the book is "The World Is Flat."
hmm,
And I looked at the cover, I'm like, what? And I was like, okay, look here, I ain't got time to really look in this book right now, but I'm gonna set this aside because I got to go do this interview, but something wrong. The world is flat. Okay. So before other folk ran around, the Europeans ran around thinking the world was flat, Africans knew it was not flat.
okay,
They knew it was circular. They knew because they were the traders. They were the ones who were the merchants that were actually seafaring, that would travel to various continents, not just on their own continent from country to country. Many of them were the coastal people who would build boats and then travel. So, I mean, we've seen outstanding work over the years by people like, God bless the dead, Professor Van Sertima, who I had the opportunity to meet, who did a book called They Came Before Columbus,
yeah,
that shows you how, if you look at the Olmecs and you look at the history down even in Mexico, where they still didn't blow off the noses in this case, right? Like
okay,
they did in
okay,
Kemet.
right,
When
right,
you find the statues there and the things that they built in honor of who they look like you and I,
wow,
you know, in terms of features.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that dates way before Lost Boy. Okay. So how can we turn around and say that there weren't Africans in North America when there's everything that shows that there was? You know, it's just like saying that, you know, other folk taught us reading and writing. I'm a mathematician. I have to always make it clear to people that is a straight lie, because the first writing and the first numerical systems happened in Kush and in Kemet. Those places are in Africa. There's no continent called the Middle East. There
right.
is a continent called Africa. So all of these things have been done, like you said, that we have to learn it so we can teach it. We have to dig for it now, though, because a lot of these books I'm mentioning and a lot of what you and I are talking about are not able to be found anymore. A lot of times books go out of print. A lot of times people burn books, they get rid of things. If you look at it's on YouTube, if you look up Richard Pryor in Egypt, it is a perfect video to watch about how this happens, how our story gets erased, how
Mhm.
it gets locked off, how it gets buried, and how it gets burned if we find it. And so when we find it, we got to run with it and we
Right.
got to share it as quickly as possible, so that not just other people like us, that look like us, that act like us, know it, but everybody knows it. The unfortunate reality is this: most times, most people of Anglo descent, they've been to Africa. They go to Africa over and over and over again. It's people of African descent don't have the money, even when they have the dream, they don't
Right,
have
right.
the money to get there. Or, like you said, they don't want to go because I'm scared. I don't know. Should I go? Because I heard the people ain't gonna treat me right. Or I heard that, you know, it's animals everywhere. Come on, there are skyscrapers, cities, bed and breakfasts,
Oh,
American hotels. There's all that stuff in various countries throughout the continent. So it's only when there's civil wars we do need to be concerned.
right.
But again, would you know that? that there are civil wars? Would you know about the genocide? Because as you mentioned earlier, it's not on the news.
Not on the news.
It's not in your classroom. Your teacher can't teach you what they don't know. So that's the issue. So now we don't really have that much of an excuse. It's on you to do your due diligence and to seek the truth. And seek, and ye shall find.
And that's one of the reasons why I wrote these books, because when I went,
yes, I got to get your books.
I said that what I have to do is begin to start teaching our children from a young age.
Yeah.
And so as they begin to learn about Ghana, so what's interesting, I went to Tanzania, or Tanzania as they say it, Tanzania, and I left the Ghana book there.
Yeah.
And they took me to a school and started teaching the children
from that book.
And so they don't have a lot of intercontinental
information. That's right.
I said, wait a minute. I said, I think we have something here.
We do.
If we can begin to start having these conversations from a young age, they don't grow up like how I did.
Right.
Believing the negative things, and they can say, wow, I really want to go explore. And so I have a series of 8 books on the way. So I'm taking to Ghana, Sierra Leone, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Zanzibar, taking them up Kilimanjaro. I'm taking them to Togo and Benin. Any place I visit, there's going to be a book about. I'm taking them to Salvador and Brazil, so they can learn about how about their relatives that they have as a part of the African diaspora. But when you
have to send a set of your books.
Oh, I will. Oh, I'll send them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll send them to you so you can have them and share them.
Yeah.
But you know what you were talking about, though. We have been trained to think that Europeans discovered everything, invented everything,
right,
and created everything, and were the smart. So we hear about Christopher Columbus, but then we don't even realize that there were people already on ships,
absolutely,
Africans who were already on ships, already sailing across the world. And so it's that type of education that is so important. And then if you ever noticed, this other parallel is how it's like a mind game. They say, okay, don't go to Africa. They tell us don't go to Africa because
while they go,
it's the sick and poor, and they're gonna get you, and somebody gonna rob you and scam you, and I'm thinking that'll happen in America. But anyway, that's
exactly very easily.
But what they do is they demonize every area where brown and black and African people are. So they do the same thing. They do it in America. If you go into the hood, if you go to that area, it's gonna be crime, it's gonna be poverty, it's gonna be sick.
Also, they taught our folks to say, don't go on them islands, stay away from them Geechees. That also is part of it.
Yeah.
Now, meanwhile, who's helping them navigate to get to these areas? Again, if you think about what you said with Columbus and you study him, there were Africans helping him navigate his way around. And I keep saying to people, y'all don't study. Okay, let's go to their story and what they taught me in school. I was always that person that loved to read. So my thing was, well, why is this called America then? His name, Christopher Columbus. Oh, because of Amerigo Vespucci. Right. So Amerigo Vespucci was before him. And that's why y'all named it America. So why are you celebrating him? You see what I'm saying? So there's contradictions even in what they tell you, but you have to study it and you have to have the presence of mind to evaluate this and ask questions. Because how is it that you can be there, like you said, taking a picture with the little child with the swole up stomach and flies on them, but I can't go over there. How come you survived to take that picture? But you tell me if I come, like you say, I'm going to get killed and all this stuff going to happen, but you didn't. So we got to use logic, but I know common sense is not so common, but we got to start to do that.
But the thing that they do is they use us to
against us.
It's like when I started talking about going to visit Africa, and this is about 3 years ago now, and people start, why are you going over there? What what's happening? What's going on? You're having a midlife crisis.
That's funny. It was a midlife crisis. I never heard that before. Crisis, Oh, wow.
But I went over there and I saw everybody from Europe, from Asia, from the Middle East. Like they
chilling, like it's their place.
I was like,
you like, really?
And I'm saying to myself, but we go through mental. I said this colonization thing is deep.
Yes, it's deep.
I said because people are jumping through hoops.
Yes,
I want to go. It's on my bucket list. It's not on their bucket list. They just go.
They just go.
Now,
And it
understand
take
to your
all the
point.
family, you see them with the kids and everybody, his wife, husband, all the little churn babies on the
I,
plane going on.
and
Everybody got a passport.
everybody got a passport. Now, to your point, to the economics, but here's the other side of it too, because we find a way to get on the plane to go travel to where
Come
we
on
want to
now.
go.
See where you going at? See where you going at, Jay? See that?
See,
See that?
we
See that?
we go we get on that plane and do what we
We
got to
got on
do.
that cruise ship too. A
We
bunch
go
of
to
us was
cruise ship.
always, especially out of Charleston, was every year. They go on a cruise. They go on a cruise. Why don't y'all go somewhere else?
Yeah,
Like, it's like you go on that same cruise route every year. There's more places to go. There's more of us elsewhere. Come on.
all, all
Yeah,
over the world, and
I
that's the
know.
thing.
Yes,
And that's why conversations like this are so important, because
absolutely.
you have given so much insight. I'm just sitting there, just I'm like, just keep talking, because you kept there were things that I was learning just
Mm,
about our history and the connection,
yeah,
and those things are just so important for people to hear. And this is how we play our part in chipping down the walls, the
yeah,
miseducation,
yeah.
we're now saying, hey, listen, consider this.
Right.
Consider that there's a world outside of your road, your city, your
Your
town, your
block.
block, your
Mhm.
county, your state,
Right.
even your
Absolutely.
country.
Even your country.
And you
Hmm.
don't even, and here's the thing, and I tell people all the time, I say I'm a global citizen now, so I can appreciate
Too.
my Geechee, my Gullah
And it
Geechee roots. I can
okay.
also go over to West Africa and
Yeah.
appreciate my Creole roots over there. I can go
True.
down to South America and Salvador
True.
and appreciate that. I can go over to East Africa. I can go back to DC. I can come up here and I can
Right.
appreciate that, because that's all a part of
Who
what
you are.
makes us unique. And so
That's
for us
right.
to deny any of it is like denying a part of ourselves.
Absolutely right.
And I said I can't
Absolutely.
live life like that. And so what it
There you
did
go.
for me is now I'm excited. I can't wait to when the tours open back up. I'm looking forward to bringing people down to back home, as they say, back
Yeah,
home. I'm
for
down to South
sure.
Carolina and down into
Sure.
to St. Helena, and I guess
Yeah.
wherever your
Yeah.
tours are in
Absolutely.
because it is in
Absolutely.
St. Helena, right?
I'm on St. Helena, and I usually host our Gullah Root Experience tours myself for groups, not for individuals. They got
Right.
to be groups, 7 or more. And then we have others that have other Gullah Geechee tour companies that will give you an authentic Gullah Geechee experience throughout the Gullah Geechee Nation. So we also help coordinate the entire coast so that we make sure people don't fall into the tourist trap where
Uh,
something is labeled Gullah, but you get there and it's an Anglo person trying to give you the tour, or you get there and it's somebody just moved here last week or last month, and just because they're of African descent, they read a couple ghost story books and they trying to give you a tour because the tourism dollar is such
right,
a big thing.
right.
But no, we make sure it is authentically Gullah Geechee. And so you get to Nampun, what we the Nampun, you get some food that we eat, your money goes into Gullah Geechee pockets directly, so that then those businesses can hire more natives and we can stay on our land. So it's all about the economic aspect as well, because more often than not, people do crazy stuff as far as I'm concerned, like come here, go in a gated area, stay in a resort, pay for that,
Yes,
then
yes,
contact our office after they get here, not
yes,
before they plan to come from wherever they were coming from, and
yes.
say, oh, we're here. We just like to take a tour tomorrow. We don't do that because we do
No,
customized tours.
there you
So
go.
you needed to book this a month to 2 to 3 months ahead. You can't get here and jump on ours. Now, them drive-by tours, they run every day because
Right.
they're not going to give you the experience we're going to give you. So that's the other thing, is if you want the full experience and you want it from natives, we don't do those drive-by tours like that. So then they get here, they want to find out if you can do it for nothing.
Oh,
You're staying in a resort and now you don't want to pay $20 a person to take the tour. Are you kidding us? Or the other part is the ones who go to Charleston, they go to the plantations, the literal plantations, and they pay
yes.
$20 and $25 per person, as we say, per head, to
Yeah.
go in there, and then want to contact the Gullah Geechees after that and say, well, we don't have no money left really for our group. We brought a group of youth or family, but we don't really have no money. So, but could y'all still take us around? Why?
No, absolutely not.
No,
Nope.
we're not doing that. There's an economic part, and there needs to be a consciousness in regard to how we spend our money. You see what I'm saying? And where we put it. So if you want to contribute to continuing to displace us, then you stay in a resort. Okay. If you don't do that. You email us. We are online, been online from the beginning. I'm a computer scientist. Okay. I'm the first one put Gullah Geechee on the internet with the first website to ever exist with Gullah and Geechee, both in the name. So we've been on here from the beginning. We've been here. Okay. So there ain't no reason to say we didn't know how to find you. That's not true. That means you just didn't want to do the work to do it. But do that, and then you can get a full experience. Don't leave here with no attitude because you stayed somewhere else and got disrespected. I felt you were taken advantage of because their brochure had a picture of someone with a sweetgrass basket on it, and you went and stayed there. But when you got there, you never saw any of us.
Yeah.
It's called marketing. They just use our image. They use old black and white photographs. They do all that to draw money to the coast. But whose pockets did that money end up in? Many times it's not in the Gullah Geechee pockets. So you have to do your due diligence like you've been doing, Brother Jay. We're traveling around, finding our people, supporting our own communities, our own villages worldwide. I do it everywhere I go. When I went to London, I went and found where the Black folks was. You see what I'm saying? As the first
we must
thing
be related. I think we must.
I think we're going to check on that. We
just might to check that out.
We just might be, for real though.
For real, because when you said that, I was like, well, I'm supposed to go to London. I'm supposed to go to Paris, and I said, well, I said when I'm going, and I told my buddy, he's UK, full blown UK. I said, I said, you got to take me to where the Black people are. I said, you got to take me. I said,
go to Brixton.
He said, well, what do I know about that? He said, I'm a white British guy from the coast. I said, well, you got to find me, to tell me where I need to go. We're going to work it out. And the thing is because we're there. We're in Paris. We're in Canada. We're every place. We are everywhere. And once we understand that connection, and so when I was researching you, and one of the things that I didn't know I was going to find you, but I knew I said I have to find out what's going on. For me, I just knew Geechee. That's all I knew. I said, I need to find out what's going on.
Right.
And so, of course, you came up first because you've been doing this for so long. And I said to myself, I said, she's not like the hired help. She knows what she's talking about. I said, she has you know how some people, they front the people out.
Script. Yeah, they got a script.
Yeah, I was like, oh, no. She knows. She speaks with a different kind of authority here. She knows, because my thing is economics as well. It's like, well, I don't want to go and cause I went to a plantation. I'm not going to say where.
Right, got you.
Down south, way down south. And I went in, and all the people there were working looked like us. But then they said, well, the owner of the plantation. I said, the owner of the plantation. You know, my mind already started working. I was like, now who's the owner of the plantation? The owner said he's going to take us back to Africa one day. I said,
what?
Right, I know. I was like, he gonna take you back?
You back to Africa.
I was like,
they waiting on that.
You're right. That's the you know, wow. I was like, I told him, I said, brother, look here, man. I said, come here, let me holler at you real quick.
I know that's right.
When you ready to go, you go. I said, you have to wait for them to
you go.
You go. And he said, really? I said, yeah. I said,
he said, really?
I was
he really said, really?
He said, really? I looked, I said, okay, I see what we're dealing with here. And so I just really wanted to encourage him and inspire him. And I said, look, check out my videos. Let's see what my experience was like. And he watched it. He said, yeah, man, one day I really hope to go. I said, you can. I said, you can go.
You can go.
Really. And so, but it was not, the plantation was not owned by one of us. Not that we would necessarily want to own it.
Want to own it, right.
But they're still making money per head.
Absolutely.
If you were off of our stories.
Yep.
And off of
our labor, because like you said, all the people working there.
And built it. How about that?
And built it.
And I said, I don't think I'm gonna be taking any tours to that particular plantation because I don't necessarily want to support
that enterprise. I know. I feel the same way.
But there's a lot of history there I think is important. Right. So I'm still kind of wrestling with it.
You're wrestling with it. Yeah, and I know how you feel because in Charleston, there's McLeod Plantation. And I know when people saw me actually out there fighting for McLeod Plantation, I know they were like, what the world happened to Queen?
What she done start smoking?
What is this? Why would she do that? But as a historian, I have to keep people clear.
Yeah.
There's not one stitch of land from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida. It wasn't a plantation at one point. It's only a matter who owns it, like you said, who has the deed. Right. My ancestors happen to have the deed from 1862 forward. So during the Civil War, on both sides of my family, they got the deeds to the property, and I still live on it right now. I'm speaking to you from one of them now. And I just came out my field early this morning, growing the things my ancestors grew. The thing about it is we don't have no plantation houses on St. Helena Island. We don't have any of that stuff because it wasn't that type of plantation. A lot of what people have in their head is gone with the wind.
Right.
It's the Hollywood version of plantations. And so that becomes the problem. That's where, like, you have in that wrestling match, like W.E.B. Du Bois talked about the souls of Black folks, where you're like, well, the history is there and our ancestors were there. So what do? We honor our ancestors there. I go to plantations and pour libation. I go to plantations and I go and do ceremonies at the enslavement cabins. I go there when they're like, oh, but the tour of the big house is happening. I couldn't care less.
Right.
Except for the fact that my ancestors built that house and this one here, but I knew they lived in this one here. This is where they cried at. This is where they prayed at. This is where the midwives caught the babies at. We're going to do our ceremony right here. So McLeod Plantation was one that we fought for because Charleston did enough erasure and reinterpretation of the story to make it almost look like chattel enslavement didn't happen, or it was nice when it did, when there's no such truth to that. Yeah. And I know when I first started coming to Charleston County, a lot of Black folks would be whispering to me afterwards in meetings, oh, I'm so glad you spoke up. I'm so glad you said something, because you know, them people don't let us say them people.
Them people.
What do you mean? You owned by these people or something? Right. I'm like, they don't own me. No. So I'm going to say what I have to say, and I'm going to say it to their face. I'm not going to be whispering or going on the internet later writing no disparaging nothing. I'm telling you, you do not own us, and we have a right for our freedom and the right to tell our own story. But what you will not do is lie and say that Mr. So-and-so did this and he built that and him and his brother put up all the architecture. No, it's my ancestors that built this. They built it literally. Every board on here, every brick you see, that is a technique from Africa, these bricks. The metalwork came from Africa.
Yes.
What are you talking about? This stuff didn't come with y'all from Europe, and you know that. So why don't you tell that story? Well, now the blessing is that I was recently invited to one of them same plantations that the first time I went there said that lady looked at me like if she could have thrown me out and off her tour, she would have done it. But ooh, would she have had somebody to contend with if she did? Okay, because I questioned every point in her narrative and in her script along the way, because she kept leaving out Africans. It was as if we weren't there, you know, and we're looking at, what are you kidding me? Now they want to tell the story of the Black families, of the Gullah Geechee families, of the people. But why? Go back to economics. Cultural heritage tourism is the major driver in world travel prior to the pandemic. So that's why. It's not because they're so altruistic.
Right.
It's not because of so-called Black Lives Matter, none of that. It is because there have been people like you and I who have been pushing against, and like you said, chipping at the wall. But now the wall is falling down, they're realizing, wait a minute, but even pieces of the part of the wall could make some money. And they go back and they monetize it. That's so right. We have to speak up and say, look, as children of Mother Africa, you can't charge us to go in these places. That's we right. have the right to come in these places for free.
That's right.
Because our ancestors built them. That's and right. You all have already taken enough from them. You can't take from us. And if we do that, trust me, you can chip away at some more things, and there can be some more equity, and there can be more truth out here. But it's important that we speak up and stand with those who do. Because a lot of people consider me a pariah because, oh no, she talking that stuff to them people, and them people don't like that. I don't care what they like. I like the truth. I love the truth. So I'm going to tell the truth, because in the end, I work for God. I don't work for these people. But like you said, if we here sitting here waiting for whoever to take us somewhere, all right, You never get off the plantation.
Never.
When you gonna leave yourself?
And going to be in this plantation in your mind. And I think that's the part that has
That's it.
grieved me the most, dude. I see
Me too.
so many of us who are willing or unknowingly on the plantation in our minds.
Absolutely.
But even when someone tries to show us, we opt to stay. And now I wonder what Harriet might have gone through. Now it's
Now
like,
you know.
now
Yes,
I'm like,
you can
well,
see it.
slavery, everybody, slavery's over. I'm like, yeah, physical
No,
maybe, but psychological,
psychologically, it's not.
I see this thing is it's entrenched, and
Right.
it is but here's the good part about it. There are people
Mm-hmm.
who have felt the same way that you and I have felt and feel,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they
Mm-hmm.
just haven't had enough people to, of course, with YouTube and everything else out now they're able to see more and more people start to share their stories,
Yeah.
and to be very vocal and to be very bold, and to
Yeah.
recognize that we are descendants of some of the strongest of the strong.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so there would be those our ancestors who made it to what we know as America, who would rise up, and
Yes.
even down in Brazil they would rise up,
Yes.
all through everywhere they would rise up.
Yes.
And so where our rising up might not be with guns and arrows, now
Mm-hmm.
our rising up is with education and
Mm-hmm.
using the tools that we have to be able
Mm-hmm.
to say, listen, you have there's something that you have resources, especially if you're in America, you have resources and
Right.
access to resources, you have access to education. There are
Mm-hmm.
things that you can do that can change this whole narrative.
Absolutely.
But now it's just a matter of people having a desire to want to do it, because I'll tell you,
And that's the
sometimes the
critical
most
part.
difficult people to break through are the ones that look like us, but they're hot, they're the ones screaming about America's so racist, America's this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, it may be, but I have a responsibility and I need to do some
As
things
well.
myself. And I don't
Exactly.
and I don't have an excuse to show up less than, because I have now that I'm getting the understanding that you referred to. It's like
Mm-hmm.
now I have to show up a particular way. So
That's right.
as we
That's
get ready to
right.
wrap this up, what should we be doing as a community, as a culture, as in particular Gullah Geechee, but also
Mm-hmm.
those who are outside of the Gullah Geechee community?
Mm-hmm.
What can we all do collectively to bring awareness to what your work is and what you're doing, and how
Mm-hmm.
can we support you in that effort?
Well, when we talk about what I say, the children of Mother Africa, I'm gonna start out there and then I'm gonna come on in close to home.
All right.
Ubuntu. Okay, so all of us have to work together. The whole thing is that they say if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. So we all have to have that concept as children of Mother Africa. And wherever we see any of us trying to tear each other down, we need to call that into order, because it's not decent nor in order. We need to uplift one another. And the more that we do that, there's nothing else that anybody else can do to us that would be negative. So that's the first thing I feel we need to learn to do, that is uplift each other and support each other economically, as we've talked about, and emotionally and spiritually as African people around the world. And that then, of course, applies to Gullah Geechees, that we have to continue to be one set of people. When you see the Gullah Geechee Nation's flag, it is human bodies intertwined, inextricably tied together. The Igbo, Mandinka, Malinke, Yoruba, Gola, Gizi, Mendi, Temni, Fiki, Bibio, and all that children and things like that from Mother Africa, as well as the Yamasee, Kusabo, Adisto, Cree, but the indigenous that are in some of our DNA. We are inextricably tied together and rooted in this Sea Island soil, in this land called the Gullah Geechee Nation. So as long as we don't allow others to uproot us, then we don't have a problem. But as I say, hunter must take care of the root for heal the tree. So we have to dig deep to these roots and make sure that our roots are healed so that our future fruit is healed as well, and that they produce in abundance. And so the way we do that, we have to continue to stand for this land and living our cultural traditions on it. So you can follow us at GullahGeecheeNation.com, and you'll find out about all the things we're doing, whether it's the tours that you talked about, or whether it's events we're having, or letter writing campaigns and fundraisers to help folks stay on their land and to fight for our rights in various arenas. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Gullah Geechee, and Gullah is spelled Gullah. Geechee is spelled Geechee. Ain't no I in Geechee for the we. So GullahGeecheeNation.com. Gullah Geechee on Twitter and Instagram, and Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook. We also have the Gullah Geechee Land and Legacy Fund on GoFundMe.
Mhm.
And if anyone does Cash App, they can just donate to that fund that helps us in these legal battles to $ Gullah Geechee Nation on Cash App. And I just want to say to you, Brother Jay, that it truly has been a blessing, even though we had to meet this way virtually.
Right.
I'm so glad he always for Yeti from one another that Gullah Geechee and thing like that ain't ready us to do this your kind of good work all around the world. So I know you and I are after Rona going buddy business. You and I will end up on some planes together, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
And definitely going over to the motherland and other parts of the world. Like I tell you, I got a couple more continents to go, and I, check that off my list. And then I plan to run around all over just the continent of the motherland myself. And so definitely you and I will get together here and there and share our stories of our legacy and make sure that the next generation knows that as we Gullah Dr. Buzzard say, "Hona tink free, hona be free." So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure, and I thank you again for. I know everyone cannot get an interview with you, so I count it an honor. And so, for everyone who's been watching, we've been talking to Queen Quet. She is the chiefess of the Gullah Geechee community. She is doing so much to make sure the Gullah Geechee Nation, I should say, she's been doing so much to make sure that the Gullah Geechee history has not been forgotten and has been brought to the forefront. And because I'm a descendant of the Gullah Geechee Nation, and I'm a part of the proud part of the Gullah Geechee Nation, you best believe I'm going to make sure that I represent it wherever I go, and to make sure that people know all over the world about the important heritage that we share right there in the southeastern part of what we know as the United States. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight. And pray God's continued blessings on all that you're doing.
The same be unto you, my brother. Peace, love, blessings, and safety in all your travels.